Hi everybody, my name is Beth Mihaljevic and I'm the owner of Mihaljevic Life Solutions, where we focus on educating people on the cost of long-term care, understanding their care plan, and then funding it. And today on our second session, I'm here with my dad, Dan Mihaljevic, who was a caregiver for Nicoletta, we call her Mike for short, for the past 8 years. And Mike passed away this past November. So Dad has ended his caregiving journey and now is working through all the estate paperwork. So just real quick overview as we dive in here. Let's talk about what long-term care is. It's needing custodial care for longer than 90 days. I think today we want to talk a little bit about the 6 activities of daily living, which if you're healthy, we can still do everything today for ourselves. And then as your health span ends, and with Nicoletta, it ended when she was 55 and diagnosed with frontal lobe dementia. So what we're going to do is overlay the 6 activities of daily living with the stages of Alzheimer's, and there's 7 stages that you go through. And then we're going to talk about the care that's needed at each stage, but then also from Dad's perspective as the caregiver, what you went through personally and how you would have prepared differently, or how anybody else can prepare themselves. So again, Mike's dementia began with the frontal lobe, which meant that the first things that went for her was her motor skills and her speech. So why don't you talk a little bit, and I think a lot of people struggle with this, about Mike's last day of driving. How'd that happen?
Yeah, it was a Sunday afternoon, and she needed to take one of her grandchildren to a store. And so she got in the car, started the car, and proceeded to turn around like a K-turn. So she basically lost the ability to go from drive, reverse, turn the wheel, drive, reverse, and go. She was literally halfway into the street and just totally forgot how to the sequence of drive to reverse to turn the car around. Yeah, it was crazy.
So you were at the house and you kind of saw this happening. She
Yes.
actually didn't get that far, luckily.
No, she did not get that far at all, because I was outside watching them do it, and I said, why is she stuck in parallel to the street for like 2 minutes? I said, something's wrong with the car or whatever. So I came up and found out that she said, I just don't remember how to put the car in drive. And I said, okay, put the car in park and come on out. Then I jumped in and I took him to the store. I made no big deal about it, but then I just knew something was wrong, something was up.
So is this before her diagnosis, or is like when the doctor did the, officially said she has?
No, before. This was the very start of it. There was something wrong, and that's when we started getting this doctor scheduled and figure out what was going on. She was an RN, and another big wake-up call was that she was per diem, and we did the Florida winter thing, Florida for the winter. So she would get this travel contracts, and so she was at the last hospital. They about a week into it, they basically called her in to the office and they said, there's something wrong with you. You're losing simple nursing skills. So he said, there's something wrong. You should go get yourself checked out, but you cannot work here anymore. So that was a big wake-up call. That's really started the process of investigating what was wrong with her.
What did you do as her partner, and she comes home with that. And we've seen now the driving incident. You've seen probably small things
Small
around the house.
things, yeah, very small things.
And then now you have this
Just went,
outside.
you just basically, you supported her. I said, okay, maybe there's just something, you know, minorly wrong, or something's going on in your brain that, you know, that's fixable, things of that nature. I just kept on reassuring her. I said, don't make a big deal about it. Let's just start the process of getting checked out, you know. So, a bunch of interviews, a bunch of testing, and then we found Penn Medicine, and they were really the final diagnosis when they did an MRI scan on her, and they said, "Yep, it's right there, right in the front left lobe, whiter than white, with entanglements." And she says, "You got Alzheimer's." It was a heavy day. I kept reassuring her. I says, "Well, you know, I'll probably go first. Don't get, you know, upset. I mean, you gotta be upset, but I don't. We'll hit this together. We'll work through this together. I'm not gonna do anything. We'll just work together on this."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you bring up a good point there, because although you're joking, you really don't know how this disease is going to progress.
No.
And it really could have been 20 years before we saw the decline that we did. But you just don't know.
Yeah, it's really, you don't, it's just how it progresses in the brain. And you know, some of these folks could live up to 20 to 25 years with this horrible disease just eating away at our brain, at the brain.
Yeah. So, talk for a second. So, Mike can't work as a registered nurse anymore.
Correct.
So immediately, from a financial standpoint, do you have to rely on your savings as you're going through this whole diagnostic process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's limited income for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very limited.
Okay.
Save. Put away for a rainy day, because you never know when you're going to need it. And thank God she did.
Yeah, she was very, very good at that. Okay, so in the beginning, we're losing some motor skills. Mike, I would say earlier than most, accepted that she can't drive anymore.
Oh, she right. That was the last day she drove.
Yeah.
There's no more of that.
It's kind of interesting when it happened for her, because I feel like she was still like cognitively fully with us.
Mm-hmm.
So she understood that it was scary for her to be driving a car.
Right.
Versus like she wasn't progressed far enough in her dementia to really be like, well, I don't understand why I can't drive the car. Like, she knew there was something wrong.
Right. She realized there was something wrong. In fact, she's there's something wrong with me. She should. That's what she kept on saying. I could feel it. You know, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so the not being able to drive, for most, would have been a humongous change.
Yeah, well, that's independence. You're now depending on somebody else to drive to doctor's appointments, to grocery stores, anywhere. You know.
And how did that feel? And the
Well-
caregiving spot.
Well, I just knew at that time is that I just had to help her in any way I could, driving wise, taking her to doctors, taking her to grocery stores, taking her anywhere. You know, she was still functional, still could walk,
Yeah.
and you know, just
So we'll call that like stage 2 maybe, because there's 7 stages of Alzheimer's. And stage 1 is really normal. You don't know anything about it. Mike was diagnosed at the age of 55, so statistically speaking, probably early 50s, she had that tau protein
yeah.
growing. So early 50s is, we'll say for Migueletta, was stage 1. we'll say stage 2 through 4, it's mild cognitive impairment and motor skills. So, in your household, that meant that Mike went from being a registered nurse, fully participating in all aspects of your life,
Daily activity, yeah, everything.
to now you went to not only driving her to the grocery store, picking out all of the food to make sure, cooking it, preparing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's nowhere near a hot stove.
So talk a little bit about how that happened. Did you wait for something bad to happen, or did you already treat the situation like, and I know you, so I know it was preventative.
Right.
But I'm just thinking for people that are at the beginning of their caregiving journey, and somebody's used to making a sandwich or cooking pasta with the boiling water. When did you realize, all right, that's it. They're not allowed. Mike's not in the kitchen anymore. Because then she started doing that shadowing thing where she'd turn around and she'd be right there.
Right, and that was fine because I would do the bulk of the work, like you say, the hot water. But I would know she was right there behind me and everything, so I knew, and she knew not to come to the stove because I said, "This is off limits to you, but we'll do it together." And she stood there alongside of me, things of that nature. That's just one example.
Right.
I mean,
in the beginning, as a caregiver, I feel like it's emotionally so draining, but physically and mentally, you can kind of figure out, okay, I can deal with this, right? Like, I can prepare her meals, I can take her to the store, I can manage the doctor's appointments. And again, you can say that with relative ease because of your age difference.
yeah.
And you were financially stable enough to say, listen, I can walk away from even doing part-time work, fully focus on
Yeah, there was, as soon as it started progressing, stage 2, stage 3, I was already going to say that's enough of me working to become a full-time caregiver. The last thing I wanted to do was put her into a memory care unit until I couldn't handle the safety part of it for her. And that's transferring her from the bed to the toilet to the shower, of that nature. Before, I used to do that with no problem, and then it just started getting worse, where I said, I'm gonna need some help. But that was down the road. That was like 6 years later that we did that.
6 years later, you finally got help.
Yeah, it's hard to give it up. Hard to give up the reins, because you did a lot of stuff all the time for her. You just didn't want to give up that control because you kind of knew her, right? We knew each other, ins and outs. It was amazing.
All right, well, I'm not allowed to cry, so.
No crying. It's a journey. No crying.
It is. So the other thing I would add in the beginning of this, with the mental stamina that you had to build up, and you really just had to become very flexible, meeting Mike where she was at, and really how she was progressing. With my sometimes limited exposure to Nicoletta, I saw the decline, I think, a little bit differently, because you're with it, with that.
I lived it every day, right?
Yeah, and so like, I remember one time coming down to visit you, we're sitting there, and you had a red plate, and I'm like, what's up with the red plate? And it's just one of the many things that you did to try to engage her brain to focus on eating. So again, when you go through the 6 activities of daily living, eating and bathing and transferring, I would say that those are the ones that are super important because injury can happen.
Oh, yeah.
If you dress wrong, not great, but, not that big of a deal. But if you can't transfer correctly, that's when you fall and that's when you have injuries.
Like, for example, in my thinking, I took out the tub, made a shower stall. So it was just an easier transfer from like say from the toilet to the shower, because they're literally just right there, boom. 1, 2, shower chair, so she's sitting, and you just, wash her down and just dry her and everything, and then pick her back up and put her in the wheelchair when that time has came, to the wheelchair access and all that. The other thing you have to be careful of is the sensitivity of the skin. In her case, she did not like the shower per se, the water coming out of the shower head. So I put a 3-way valve up, a shower for me, for example, but basically I hooked up a hose. And I made it long enough where I would just take a washcloth and I do a cascading, so there was no pressure hitting her, and it was more comfortable, and she liked it, and I was able to wash her hair with no problems because the water was just cascading all the way down with no problems. Where initially she would be agitated because the water kept on hitting her, the shower head, even though you put it on the mildest setting. So that was a big plus to find that, to figure out that hose. And even long enough to take it over to the toilet, for example. You can, if she kind of mess, you would. Then eventually I put in a bidet, so to take care of all that issue.
So let's stick on bathing, and let's talk about the stages of it, right? Because we go from Mike being normal, regular Mike to probably needing help. You probably started watching her while she was in the shower, like probably just standing,
Just
making
support.
sure she doesn't fall.
No, just a support, right?
And then at what point, like, I'm just being real here, because being a caregiver is very hard. So you're going from a 55-year-old woman that could do everything caring for herself
Extremely independent.
to, I would say, probably within 5. At what point were you washing Mike's hair? Were you making sure? Were you doing all of her personal hygiene?
Stage 3.
So it happened kind of quick.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It goes and then it plateaus, and then it goes down a little bit, then it plateaus, and it goes down and plateaus. So you just got to stay ahead of the steps. Just be ready for the next adventure, so to speak.
Yeah.
What's next? What else is going to happen? That's why when we took out the shower tub and put a shower stall in, we didn't want her stepping over the bathtub, because that's a big tripping / sliding issue. Transfer her over.
Dad is a little bit of an engineer, so it was very interesting to always see how he would come up with clever little ways to make his life easier and Mike's life easier. But for those of you out there that are not the tinkering type, number one, everything you could buy on Amazon, but they do have professionals out there that help you with this care coordination, and they'll come into your house and they'll evaluate your bathtub, your home, and say, all right, listen, you're going to be best served if you want to age at home and you want to receive this care at home. You're going to want to put a ramp in. You're going to want to get this safety handle put in on the toilet so that when they are transferring, it's easier. If I could go back in time and know what we know now, at the beginning of this journey, when you start realizing the care that's going to be needed, it's almost like you'd want to get it all set up first.
Right.
Like, don't wait until Nicoletta declined to the point of needing that, of tripping, and then you're like, oh,
I shoulda, coulda.
right. So it's so important, and you somehow had the wherewithal.
Yeah, you just watch her, and as she declined, you say, okay, this is what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
So then you just get ahead of the ball and fix it for safety reasons, convenient reasons.
Yeah.
There's a ton of reasons you want to get ahead of it. You don't want to play catch up, because if the injury happens, then it's long term health issues.
Yeah. Okay, sticking on the bathing, I want to say one recommendation, and you tell me if you agree or disagree. Find the place that they love her and take very good care of her hair.
Mm-hmm.
And just, it doesn't matter how, I guess, early you start doing this, but I would say, like, make it a special fun thing.
Yeah, she loved getting her hair done. I've even taken her to where, just to get her hair washed. I found two great places, one in Florida and one up here. And it was just they were wonderful. The shops were small, and they literally stopped when we walked through the door, when she was able to walk. And then I wheeled her in, and we figured out how to, and even in the wheelchair, we figured out how to get her hair washed. But boy, she really liked getting her hair washed. And I would take her 2 times a week to these places, and they were really, it's really neat. It was really neat, because everybody would say, hey, Mike's here. You know, and the whole shop would stop and hug her, and, you know, just be really at her needs, you know. Yeah, it worked out really well, especially that one in Florida. That was good.
So that's a really great tip with the hair salon. And again, it goes back to the transferring, because you're getting Micoletta into the car, buckled, getting her out of the car, which doesn't sound like it would be that difficult. But when you have someone that is starting to not
Understand how to move their body from standing to sitting and sitting to standing easily, it can be a little bit challenging.
Yeah, you just yeah, you got to be careful. I mean, you put her butt in first, protecting her head against the door jamb, and then you would just say, okay, we're going to pick up you always tell them what you're going to do, so there's no surprises. So you're going to pick up her legs and slide them in, and then of course you do the buckling. But you always tell the person what you're going to do, and you don't argue with them. Don't make them feel that they're like a baby or whatever. He says, hey, this is what we're going to do. Upbeat, keep it upbeat. He says, hey, we're going to go get your hair washed. You know, cooperate a little bit better. You know.
And sticking on this point, from the caregiver's perspective, you told the salon in advance, right? And then they got to know you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they treated her so well because you, as the caregiver, were Mike's advocate, and you made sure. And I remember even Gina up in North Wales doing Micoletta's hair, and just once you know and they see you, it just makes it a little bit of an easier process.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I think some caregivers, we see the posts on Facebook, and they have a lot of problems giving showers and keeping their loved one clean and going through that whole process. They just fight them on it. So if early you can make it like fun.
That's the whole thing. You make it adventure. You make it like, okay, it's a shower day. We're gonna get cleaned up. We're gonna maybe, you use even an excuse that, hey, we gotta get cleaned up. We're gonna go to lunch, or we're gonna go downstairs to the dining room or area if they're in professional care units.
I think that's a great tip. So today we've talked about just the one activity of daily living. Well, 2 really: bathing and transferring. It's 2 that we can go really deep on, but we would rather hear your specific questions. Because one of the things that you have to keep in mind if you're a caregiver, Dad's a big man, and Micoletta was tall and thin, so Dad could help and hold her up. And Dad also volunteered with emergency services for many years and ran with the fire department, and knows that when somebody's falling, how to break their fall properly. So you had some basic training that helped, but I always worry, like with Ryan, like if he, God forbid, whatever, roles be reversed, I can't lift him.
No,
like it's just
a whole
not
nother
happening.
ball game. I was very fortunate that Mike was, I think her heaviest was 149 pounds, I think.
Little model.
Yeah.
Um,
But she was tall, so, had to worry about her head.
I think that's good for right now when it comes to the bathing aspect of it, because there's all sorts of tools that you can get. My favorite, other than getting the hair washing done outside, that was nice, because to do that at your house was fine, but it was a more pleasurable experience when you brought her to the salon.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
different scenery, that helped.
my favorite thing, other than the hair washing, the sliding chair thing. Talk about that for a second, because even though you got rid of the bathtub, so think of, the bathtub that you have to step over, it still had the tiniest lip.
Mm-hmm.
Dad got a chair that half of the chair was in the shower, and then you could slide it out. Tell them all about it.
It's basically the dry side, the wet side. So you would take her, again, from the toilet, for example, and then you would just literally just pick her up, assist in picking her up, and put her right on the dry side. And then you would just unhook the latch, and you would just slide her right into the shower. And she'd be sitting there, and she'd be all ready to go. Of course, you'd have the water preset, so you wouldn't shock her. The nice warm water, but that was very neat. Because you're not lifting and pulling and pushing her in and then sitting her down.
Yeah.
You just put her right there, and eventually she knew toilet, shower, seat. We're gonna slide. Okay, ready? Pick up your feet. Then you would just coast her in.
So, the level of care that Dad provided, 10 out of 10. Absolutely amazing. And, if you're a woman and you think about, or even, a dad, I always felt this when I was sending Ella off to daycare. Like, nobody's gonna care for Ella the way that I'll care for Ella, because I'm her mom. And I kind of feel like the same for you and Nicoletta. Like, you loved Mike so much. Like, nobody was ever gonna match the level of care that you provided.
No, and that comes back and haunts you, because when you take them to the memory care unit, it's a whole different story. And we'll talk about that in another session. But to give up those reins was very hard for me.
Yeah.
Very hard, because I just knew better. I'm sorry to say it with the professionals out there, but I knew her like a book.
Yeah, you did. Because even the smallest facial expression or something,
Yeah.
you kind of knew what that meant.
Yeah, we were in tune. That was a lot of tuning.
Yeah. Well, you did a great job. That's an understatement. So, thank you again, Dad, for coming and spending this time and sharing your experiences as a caregiver. And to all the caregivers out there, I'll probably always end by saying, keep up the great work. You have one of the hardest jobs in the world. Please take care of yourself. If there's an opportunity for you to have some kind of reprieve and hire help, or whatever that means to you, please do it. Because it's very, very stressful and very difficult being a caregiver. So please make sure you're taking care of yourself. And as always, if you do not have long-term care insurance yet, please talk to me about it. It is not a sign-up sheet. It's something that you need to plan for. We want to get your plan together, and then we're going to figure out how we're going to fund it. So you need to do it when you're healthy. Insurance is not a sign-up sheet. So in Nicoletta's case, for example, when she was diagnosed, or even having those initial cognitive impairments, far too late to get insurance.
Yeah, very. Yeah.
So I would say 50. If you're 50, 51, 52, talk to me. I know it might feel like it's too early, but I promise you it's not. And hey, if you think it's too early, talk to me again in 10 years, and we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you again, Beth Mihaljevic with Mihaljevic Life Solutions. And drop any questions below for Dad. He'll help you out with any caregiving questions.
No problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome.